The Supreme Court of Canada has found an Ontario law that limits spending on third-party election advertising violates the constitutional right to vote. Before 2021, third parties in Ontario could spend up to $600,000 on advertising in the 6 months before a provincial election call. That year, Premier Ford's government stretched the restricted spending period to 1 year while keeping the spending limit the same. The province argued the extension was necessary to protect elections from outside influence, but critics said it amounted to the government trying to silence criticism. Today, the court dismissed the government's appeal with a split 5-4 decision and struck down that part of the law. The ruling says the spending limit law is so disproportionate that it allows political parties to drown out the voices of third parties. With more on this, we're joined live now by Anaïs Brussier-McNichol, Director of Fundamental Freedoms for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Thank you for joining us, Anaïs. This is a big victory for labor unions. Let me get your reaction to this.
Well, this is definitely a huge victory for democratic rights, and the CCLA intervened to advocate in favor of a broad approach to protection granted by the right to vote, and the majority decision definitely gave us that.
I want to get your reaction now to what the Premier's office is saying. They've issued this statement today, having just finished the election in which the people gave Premier Ford and our government a strong mandate. This decision has no immediate impact. We'll review the decision and determine next steps in due course. Your response?
Well, they definitely have to review the decision and decide what they're going to do next. But whatever they are going to do, we believe has to be made further to meaningful consultation with various stakeholders involved. Because whenever governments are limiting third-party spending limits, well, they are having an impact on people's right to vote, as confirmed today by the Supreme Court of Canada.
Just to make it clear for our viewers, the headline here is that the Supreme Court found that it was unconstitutional for Doug Ford and his government to limit pre-election spending by unions and other third-party groups. Can you explain to people who may not have the details why this was so important for you to challenge?
Absolutely. So the decision today is that the majority found that these spending limits created by design absolute disproportionality because third party were at a disadvantage in comparison with political parties. So these limits allow political parties to drown out the voices of third parties on political issues during an entire year of legislative activity. And it was extremely important for the CCLA to be there to reiterate the importance of the right to cast an informed ballot. And that includes being able to hear from the viewpoints, yes, of candidates and political parties, but also third parties who have important things to say in the context of political activity.
What do you say about the argument that the province has made that it's necessary to protect elections and the electorate from outside influence?
Well, there's definitely a balance to strike here. And what the Supreme Court of Canada found today is that this balance was not struck. So the government has to start over again and find a way to protect the meaningful speech and valuable speech of third parties in the context of an election.
So what happens next, Anaïs? Can you explain that?
Well, they'll have to go back to the drawing board, and if they want to limit third-party spending in the context of elections, the government will have to enact a new legislation. Hopefully, they will comply with the findings of the Supreme Court today, but we will be there. We will be monitoring this, and we will make sure that citizens' right to vote is respected by the Ontario government.
My final question for you, do you really think this would have had any bearing on the outcome of the election, given that Doug Ford and his PC government were given such strong mandates 3 times?
That's a good question, one I cannot answer today, unfortunately.
Okay. Anaïs Brussier-McNichol, Director of Fundamental Freedoms for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Thanks so much for your perspective. We appreciate your time.